All right, here we are once again. It is April something, right, Tasmin?
29.
April 29, and it's the year 2024.
24.
Okay,
Yep.
good. I'm just making sure. It's going to be a really hot one today. As everyone can see, I'm not alone today. First of all, I want to say hi and welcome our thin texters, the people who are kind enough to tune in every week and learn something. But I am joined today by Dr. Tasmin Cordie. Tasmin, don't speak yet. I have to give you a riveting introduction. Let me just say by way of context that I'm the kind of guy, if I recommend a practitioner, I'm a little snotty about it. I won't just recommend anyone. I will generally go to that practitioner myself. I think at the very least, any kind of a healthcare practitioner should have the 3 C's, right? They should be competent, caring, and compassionate. And that's the least we could expect from a practitioner when we are entrusting them with our health. And so Dr. Cordie, there's another C right there, is not only competent, compassionate, and caring, but also extremely intelligent, highly intuitive. So, making recommendations for people to go see you, as I do, is a no-brainer for me.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. So, without further ado, everyone, this is Dr. Cordie. Dr. Cordie, this is everyone.
Got it.
Now you can say hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me this morning. This will be fun.
It should be fun. Hopefully, if I do my job right, it'll be fun and it'll also be very informative. Dr. Cordie, so I wrote a little blurb, and
Okay.
I posed the question that, since you practice functional medicine, does that necessarily mean by inference that other kinds of medicine are dysfunctional?
The basic difference, I think, is that functional medicine, as compared to allopathic medicine or conventional medicine, in conventional medicine or allopathic, it's a this for that. Like if you have a cough, we give you a thing for your cough. If you have a shoulder pain, we do a thing for your shoulder pain. And in functional or medicine and foundational nutrition, which I think is additionally what I also practice and probably practice first, even before functional medicine, is foundational nutrition.
Okay.
That we're repairing all of the systems of the body so that the cough goes away or the shoulder pain goes away, or we're handling it from a place that foundationally supports the issue, not necessarily a this for that. Now, sometimes it's the case that we can do something directly. Like if you have a cough, we can give you a thing that helps that cough, but we need to understand why it's there in the first place. So that's really the basic idea behind what functional medicine does and foundational nutrition does, is it handles things with an idea of the whole system in mind, so that we can support the whole system and the overall health of the entire body gets better, not just the cough goes away. And sometimes that's essential, right, for the cough to go away because you have to work all day and talk to people.
That's right.
And so sometimes allopathic medicine is really helpful. But when people come to me for a thing, whatever that thing is, or lots of different things, we really, they're here because they don't want to just suppress the cough. They're here because they want to understand why they keep getting it every month or every year or every week or whatever it is.
So I think that you've made some really important distinctions, that allopathic medicine, and by the way, the word allo means opposite, I think. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. So if you have a cough, they try to suppress it. If your fever's high, they try to make it low. Whatever is going on, they try to give you the opposite kind of effect. And generally, it's by suppressing the manifestations as opposed to addressing the cause. So in foundational medicine, you're looking at what the body, or foundational nutrition, you're looking at what the body needs to have the raw material to help heal itself. And when you're talking about in functional medicine, you're looking at symptoms, or systems rather, you say, and the functioning of those systems.
I think that's an accurate way to say that. I mean, the systems, we think about the respiratory system or the cardiovascular system or the endocrine system. They're these enormous systems. And I don't think it's necessarily the one system that we're looking at, but because of how I'm trained to work with my patients, I use a form of biofeedback called kinesiology or manual muscle testing. And so I get to use that system or that protocol to understand what systems from the patient's body are most important to them.
Right. So to the uninitiated, basically, you're able to ask the body a question, get immediate feedback to see what's happening and what is needed by the body in order to heal.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different forms of biofeedback, and that the one that I use, that's exactly how it's designed to function for us, is to give us an immediate feedback. But I think a lot of other forms of biofeedback give us immediate feedback. This is just the one I like.
This is the one you like. Good. And this is where some of the intuitiveness comes in as well.
I think so, even though there's a very rote protocol that we use, and that's very reproducible and repeatable, which is why it works so well between practitioners and from visit to visit between me and patients, right? It's very reproducible. And I think that's what we can depend on, even though over time, any healthcare modality, or I suppose any kind of modality that you're touching about or you're interacting with other human beings, over time you create your own art with it. I mean, you create your own space, how you work best with it. And so I think that's where the intuition that you're referring to is important. And everyone has a different way to feel when they take care of people. But I think that's where the intuition is kind of sewn into the protocol.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the phrase rote protocol, and I don't want us to be too rote because it's easy to get all eggheady about this.
Yeah.
And lose the passion and lose the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Why really where we should have started out with is some of your amazing results, because everything else is really just to serve that purpose. So tell us one of your recent miracle stories with one of your patients.
Well, this is really apropos because we've just come out of this huge 4 years of an interesting condition in healthcare in general with COVID.
What happened?
With COVID in general. And that specifically harmed a lot of people in very, very unique ways that we haven't seen before. So I'll make that a really short story, because how I've seen this come up for patients is a lot of long-term chronic illness, and not just in upper respiratory or shortness of breath or fatigue problems that are, I think, more common for people to hear about, but also in deeper endocrine issues, in lots of female hormone cycling issues that have been really destructive. And so one recent patient, he's probably been under care for about 3 months, maybe 4 months. He came in because he got COVID a few years ago, and he hasn't been able to taste or smell since then. It's just been completely offline. And in addition to causing some fatigue and some other of the more common symptoms, that was far and away the most frustrating for him, because just nothing he's done has helped this. This is a pretty healthy guy. Like, he exercises, he has like a low body fat percentage. He's very strong. He really eats well, even before coming into my practice. And we've refined some things for him, but putting him on a proper supplement program for him and designed for him, that's not enormous, but it's just appropriate for him right now. Within less than 3 months, his taste and smell came back entirely. And I think that's one of the more recent really cool things that's happened just in this practice. And I see lots of things over time that are very chronic and frustrating for patients improve and go away. And that doesn't mean there's no lack of effort on the patient's part. And the only thing is just putting supplements in the right order. And patients do a lot of work to get a lot of things better in life, right? They change how and what they eat and different patterns of behavior, how they sleep, and how they track these things. I mean, they take time to really learn about what bothers them and what triggers symptoms and what they can do to improve those things and allow them to go away and help them get better faster. And so it's a big whole approach to a whole body that needs a lot of help.
Mm.
And some people are designed in a way that they need to do a lot of things for themselves to feel better. And not everyone is like that, but I tend to find a lot of the patients who end up in my practice are like that. They've done many good things from themselves, and it's not enough for them, and they need to do even more in a better order with better guidance. And this is a good example of this happening because this particular patient's been doing really good things, and anyone at the face of looking at this guy would have said, like, why would he not get better? He's in perfect health, but he's not. And we handled some long-term digestive issues that have been around since he's been a child, and with that, in addition to a couple of other endocrine imbalances, he can now smell and taste without doing anything to his smeller and taster directly.
Right. Right. Yeah, that reminds me. I used to use the metaphor with people, if you step on a dog's tail, you're going to hear it yelp out of its mouth, and the wrong end to address that issue is at the mouth, right? But
Right.
yeah, so you mentioned a lot of important things there, and I
Mhm.
want to take up this idea of the responsibility of the patient, but I want
Mhm.
to circle back to that. And first talk a little bit about COVID. So please remind me, by the way, to circle back to it because I'm liable to forget.
Okay.
Um,
Likewise.
yeah. So w- this is almost an overwhelming subject, but we've all been exposed to this novel virus
Mhm.
recently, all at once. I've seen, kind of anecdotally, observationally, I've seen that it definitely affects people.
Mhm.
I think many people have seen that, but I haven't documented it. I haven't, it's just been an observational, a light observational thing.
Mhm.
But you sort of have a COVID protocol,
Mhm.
and you've been looking at this new challenge that we've all been confronting with as one of the major causes and challenges of issues right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Before we had this sort of specific additional protocol, or added on test kit is how I'll say it. In December and January, that was added, kind of as a result of the accumulation of research that was done and work that was done to put this test kit together so that we could accurately test for what's happening with patients' bodies as it relates to either COVID and the wild virus, active co-infections, old things that are triggered that come up as a result of being infected with COVID-19 or whatever version it is, and that all of the fallout from that. We finally, as of December, had a new way to look at that. And when I started using that test kit and testing my patients, easily 90% of patients were having some kind of an issue or problem with that specifically, in addition to the other things that we were working on. So again, it doesn't mean that they were coming in and telling me that they have a COVID headache or they have a brain fog or fatigue problem or upper respiratory shortness of breath because of the damage of COVID. They may have anovulatory cycles. They may have really heavy bleeding with their cycles. They might have joint pain that never went away. They might have a gut problem that really never got better again. And so it presents in a variety of ways, but because of the way that I test with the muscle testing and the biofeedback, we're able to figure out where it's coming from and then handle it appropriately so that we have a good match for the things that are actually happening. We have a good, not homeopathic, but we have a good homologous answer for the symptoms that they're having, and so that we can start to improve those symptoms as a result of the pathology that's causing it, or it's not a great word to use with the not even antigen,
Stressor.
but the issue that's causing it. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me emphasize this and maybe translate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you've always been looking at the primary stressors that confront human beings living in today's world.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And there are things that people don't consider, right? That people consider viruses or viri, bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been done. But But you've always looked more specifically, things like parasites and heavy metals, etc., right?
Right.
Actual cause of issues. But now there's this new challenge to the human species, and we've all been sick with it, or at least most people have. So we've known about that on an acute level, but it's tending to have consequences for individuals. What consequences have you noticed that seem to be the sequela of this COVID virus?
The inability to clear toxins, and a lot of people came into this pandemic 4 years ago with a fatty liver, and a fatty liver will really block our ability to clear toxins appropriately and fast enough. And part of what this does is this viral particle will go into tissue and then create problems deep in tissue. And those problems can be thought about as a spike protein. There's lots of different kinds of proteins that it creates, but it also triggers latent viruses and other latent infections that also cause their own problems.
By latent, you mean infections that are kind of hanging out there under the surface.
Yeah, they sort of live in the tissue and deep little creeps and crevices. And one of the things that the body does is it handles things as it can. It's always working on getting better. There's no such thing as a body that's not trying to get better. It's just a matter of how much stress it has and how able it is to do that, right? And so one of the things that the body needs to do sometimes is sequester or wall off different kinds of problems, like different infections or heavy metal toxins, or parasites, things like that. It needs to wall those off, because it just doesn't have the capacity to handle them in that moment, or with the resources it has available. And so once it starts to do one of two things, either have the resources available to handle that stressor, like a parasite is a good example of that, or a heavy metal toxicity, then it can. Or if the body gets sicker and it can't continue to wall it off, then those things will get released and cause further problems because the system is just weakening. And so one of the things that COVID did was really weaken an underlying problem, and make it even worse, and then cause much more chronic issues.
And how are you seeing that manifest itself? Is that primarily in autoimmune conditions or in other things?
Hugely in autoimmune conditions. My practice has always been probably 70% women. And so, and it's probably about half cycling women, half postmenopausal women. And so the most common thing that I've seen with my patients earlier on was cycling problems. Some people they were sort of in that perimenopause zone, that they were kind of passing through some of the menopausal-like symptoms, like hot flashes and things like that, and sleeping issues. And those came back, or those got worse for a while. But that was probably the most common and really immediate thing patients were concerned about and cared about and showed up for care in the first place, was cycling disturbances. Other than that, I would say the global thing that probably brought people in more than anything was a combination of fatigue and joint pain.
As if there wasn't enough of that already in the population.
Right. Right. And so I think that their level of energy just came down, and it just never got better again. Like it never recovered again. And it just stayed stuck in a place that they just couldn't get out of. And sometimes it was correlated or combined with brain fatigue and fog. And sometimes it was just an overall body fatigue and fog. And it didn't really change how their brain seemed to function or how they talked about it or complained about it. But definitely I've seen some patterns of joint destruction happen and be much more accelerated in the last couple of years. And I think that's probably part of that autoimmune condition increase that we've seen, that you mentioned, that it may be not specifically like a rheumatoid arthritis all the time, but the immune system is now just attacking lots of different parts of itself. And with that increase in antibody activity, I think that generally bogs the whole system down and creates a global inflammatory condition where if you had a bad knee or if you had a bad finger joint, if you had a bad shoulder joint, it got even worse because there's so much more inflammation around to allow the chronic degenerative change to accelerate.
You'll forgive me for giggling now, but I mean, when you think about it and speak about it like this, it's almost like what we hear from politicians, how about everything is a disaster right now. I mean, it just sounds so overwhelming. I mean, again, we've always had these challenges, and now we have this new challenge that's just literally made everything worse. But it is wonderful that you have a protocol. I have been asked about that by different clients, you know, about that. They have these long-term sequelae of this virus. The other thing is, and I want to be careful about my language here, but the shots have had an effect as well, haven't they?
They have, and we have a sort of a specific several things that probably have come out of the ingredients in that that will show up when testing. And I kind of don't care where it comes from anymore. And it doesn't really matter because we have a way to look at it. We also have a way to handle it and help patients with declining health as a result of all of it.
Is it a similar challenge? Is it again that just the exposure to something new that seems to trigger other things? Is that the basic mechanics of how the shots are affecting people as well?
There are specific ingredients in those that I think are foreign to us and that I think very precisely suppressed immune systems and confused immune systems and introduced foreign toxins that our immune systems just didn't know how to handle. And so I think it really, because of that, I think it really could take over very quickly for some patients. If they had, again, that fatty liver was a huge deal going into COVID, and just an incompetent detoxification and elimination system. And that might mean like your lungs are compromised because of a COPD situation and you can't detox that way. It might mean your bowels don't work very well because you have IBS. You can't detox that way. It might mean your kidneys have low kidney function, like your GFR is less than 90, and that's like stage 1 kidney dysfunction. And so depending on where your weakness is likely where the issue started to show up for you or started to make things even worse. It's just a weak link, right? That's going to break first in you, whatever that is for you. And when you have a bad day, that's the thing that goes. And that's what we usually see as a symptom. It's not always what we usually see as a fix, though.
Yeah, I'm reminded a little bit of a book that I read in chiropractic school. I don't know if you read it. It was by Dr. Fred Barge. It's called One Cause, One Cure. And he said that basically the cause of disease is the body's inability to comprehend its environment and its stressors. The cure is the body comprehending its environment and its stressors. And it can be just as simple as that, as complex as everything else is. Would you say, you touched on a couple of things, right? And again, I'm going to use the metaphor of politicians. Politicians always come out and say, well, what we're going to do essentially is we're going to get rid of all the bad stuff and we're going to increase all the good stuff. Sure. That's basically what happens, right? You talked about, the bad stuff, toxins, to decrease the load of toxins on the individual. And you also talk about the good thing, which is strengthening the resources of the individual, such that, he could better handle those challenges. Would you say one of them is more important or more profound than the other when dealing with people?
It depends on the patient. Some people are living really clean lives, but they don't have enough support and they don't have enough of the right kind of support so that they're not making progress.
What do you mean by support, first of all?
If it's as easy as just enough protein in their diet, enough healthy protein in their diet, enough minerals, enough water, enough sleep, enough supportive relationships.
Okay. Raw materials, foundational resources.
Yeah, just enough food, right? Like the definition of food is a raw material that supports and rebuilds our body. End of story. And so if a thing is going in that doesn't do that or does the opposite of that, it's not food. So, we can't consider Coca-Cola a food, even though we consume it, because it doesn't do any of those things.
Right.
And, the same thing with something like tofu. That doesn't rebuild tissue. That doesn't help anything. It destroys the endocrine system and makes a lot of things worse.
So just so everyone knows, you do a lot of yoga.
Yeah.
You've just pissed off half of your community right there.
Well, that may be, but biology is biology. And so I can't help that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's not about a belief system. It's about how we work, right? It's about how we function and what allows us to get better and function better at a higher level. And so it may be like that for some people. Some people need more support or more raw materials, and some people need to remove more toxins. And for some, and for most of us, it's some kind of a meet in the middle with those two things. And with anything that we're supporting or improving health, with any kind of project that we're doing, we have to figure out where the balance is, right? Because even though there's a huge anti-aging movement, and biohacking movement right now, and it's really interesting, and they're finding out pretty great things with how to keep us young longer. We have to figure out the balance of how we can live in the world happily while we're doing that. And I think sometimes that gets a little bit lost on a day-to-day basis, where the balance is and how we figure out how to get patients better and how we help them find the balance every single day so that they can improve their health a little bit. And when we find the balance of them getting better and not getting worse, and they're happy with the progress that they're making, I think we're okay. But we just have to figure out where that is for each person.
Right. If anyone had just happened upon us now, I mean, maybe they were, looking for old reruns of I Dream of Jeannie or something, and they're here now. So welcome. I'm talking to Dr. Tasmin Cordie. We're talking about, some of the differences between functional medicine and conventional medicine. We're talking about the body and the new challenges and how we can deal with those. So, and by the way, Dr. Cordie, if you have to run, at any point, just tell me. There's so many questions that I can ask you.
Let's do it. Let me give you 5 more minutes, and then I have to take
5 more minutes. Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, thank you.
I promised that we would talk about the responsibility of the patient. You were mentioning weak links, and we know that any system is only as strong as its weakest part. And very often, the responsibility of the patient is the weak link. We've been taught that, we're supposed to be taken care of by doctors. Health is something that could be granted us by someone in a white coat. You and I know that's not true.
Right.
How do you deal with that? How do you break down those beliefs, and how do you raise the responsibility level of your patients?
So I'm really lucky that I've had very, very good teachers and very good clinicians and doctors to train me how to do this. This is not instinctual or intuitive at all. It's really a ton of training to learn how to do this really well. It's one of the reasons why when I was first out of school, I learned how to run a chiropractic office. I'm a chiropractor first. I love chiropractic, and it works very well. And it is... this is a little bit more ethereal, so hang with me for my last 5 minutes here. But I feel very much like chiropractic is a very masculine profession. Patients come in and we fix a thing and they go away, and they come in and we fix a thing and they go away. And there's not much of a covenant of space between us that we work on things together. And that's not entirely true with every practice and every clinician. I understand that it exists on a spectrum, but that's by and large how it felt to me. And it didn't seem like that would change a whole lot for me in terms of being able to take care of enough patients to run a practice. And when I got back into really my roots of applied kinesiology and functional medicine and foundational nutrition with nutrition response testing, which is the protocol I use now, there was so much more of a feminine nature of taking care of patients, because there's this covenant between us that we can decide together and have more of a communal relationship about how we take care of you and where we go together with this. Because I can decide this, but I can't go home with you and cook you dinner and clean up your toxic relationships and help you go to bed on time. But we can figure out the thing that you do next in your life that makes that better and makes whatever one next thing improve your health from this visit to next visit effective. And so that responsibility ends with me in my office next to my patients, but then they can take that and come back with that, and they get to do food journals, and they get to do other kinds of journaling and other kinds of practices and projects that help them improve their health between the time that they're here and next week when they're back. And that's their responsibility. But my part of the responsibility has to end somewhere. And I think when we have really clear boundaries about how I work for them and then how they work for them, that's what creates a really healthy doctor-patient relationship and a really productive ability for patients to improve. Because I don't really care so much if a patient can get better in 3 months while I'm taking care of them here, or 6 months, or whatever it is, like during our initial project of care. I don't care so much that they can do everything right for the next 3 to 6 months, because you can hold your breath for that long. But I want them to be able to do these skills and these skill sets and these tools and understand themselves better, so that in 60 years, they're doing the same things to continue improving their health, and they understand how to do that on a day-to-day basis for both themselves, their family, and their friends around them, because that's what improves the world. Like, that's what improves their world and the world around them. And it's so much more empowering to be able to do that kind of a project with a patient than it is to fix a thing and then go away.
Yeah, I'm thinking the imagery was the movie White Men Can't Jump, where Rosie Perez, the Rosie Perez character, she says she's thirsty. She expresses a need, a desire, and so her boyfriend brings her a cup of water. And she's like, I don't want that. He's like, what are you talking about? And she says, when a woman says she's thirsty, she wants to be empathized with. She doesn't just want a simple solution. And that's the imagery I got when you were
That's funny.
In an age where we're making those kind of distinctions might be a little fraught, but but that's what I was thinking about it. So your approach is much more collaborative. And it's not so much as, it's not heroic, like, I'm going to fix you. It's together. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah. It has to be, because I don't have enough of me for hundreds or thousands of patients to depend on me to fix them every day. Like, they have to be able to come to me with information so we can decide the next most effective step to help them get better. And then over time, we get these progressive improvements. And so we have a firmer foundation to stand on, so that when we get to a problem in 6 months or a year and 6 years from now, like, we know all the things that didn't work. And so maybe there's a new thing. And that's part of what happened in the last several years is the practitioners who do the same kind of work that I do, we kept running into these problems that we weren't finding great solutions for until the research was available and the test kits were available. So now that we have the better way to test these things. So we had a really good foundation, right? But now we have that extra bit of information that can solve the next difficult question.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the bell means that we're just about out of time.
Okay.
So listen, we didn't get to near as much as we could. This is a fascinating conversation. So I hope that you'll join me again, maybe even next week. I mean, there's just so much to talk about and so much spaghetti to unspool. And if you and I can't do it, nobody can.
No, but we can do a little bit at a time.
There you go.
A little bit at a time is what's important, not everything at once.
Yeah, understood. Okay, good. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Have a great week. Thank you, everyone.
You as well. Take care.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So that was Dr. Tasmin Cordie. She's amazing, and she does have these tools at her disposal whereby she can help with problems that some other practitioners cannot help with. So if you're interested, obviously you can Google her, Dr. Cordie. I should give you a number, or you can contact me. But she's someone who I would recommend as a practitioner, because she does check all of those boxes of what at least I look for in a practitioner: caring, competent. She's clearly intelligent. She's never condescending. at least not to me. Can't promise how she'll behave with you, but no, she takes the time to educate, so she's really cool. I'm glad to have her as a friend and as a doctor. So everyone, that's it today. Have a terrific week. I obviously, though, as the weather's getting warmer, we're wearing less clothes. My contribution into your health is weight loss, but not really, because philosophically, I am very much in sync with Dr. Cordie, and the programs that I offer are very much about building up foundational health. They don't address every problem. We're not looking to do that, but we get obviously amazing results. So if you are interested, or you know somebody who needs to lose weight, who needs to feel better and get better, have them contact us, and have a great week.